The four sibling monsters are each so different, but they share the same dream: to get a family puppy. When the kids concoct a plan to show mom they can handle a puppy, they learn they don't always feel the same excitement about work. With the help of a few guiding moments and creativity, the siblings discover clever strategies to help them get what they truly want. Head over to themonsterjob.com to get your copy today. Today's guest on Savvy is Drew Tirney, and he is on the retirement planning side of the finance space. He has nearly 20 years in this industry, working alongside financial advisors to guide companies to provide things like the 401k and other savings vehicles to their employees. Drew, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Faith. Thanks for having me.
Yes. So what has it been like in your 2 decades of being in the retirement planning space and seeing the types of questions that employers or even their employees are having? Do you feel like you're seeing a lot of the same questions?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of times, the main question that we get often asked is, am I saving enough, right? Am I going to be able to retire? That's a lot of what we hear about. And it's kind of a personal question. It really depends from person to person, if they are in fact saving enough. And I think for most, they're usually shocked at when we answer that question with a number, right? Whether we say you should be saving 13, 15% of your income, they're like, whoa. So I think that has been like a fairly consistent question over the 20 years is, how much should I be saving? And then when we actually tell them the number, how shocked they are at how much they actually have to save to earn a comfortable retirement.
Imagine. Now, what are the types of things that you wish that they knew sooner? I mean, it sounds to me like such a hamster wheel of those types of questions that are coming up, So you have one set of employees who might be asking this, but 10 years later, you'll have maybe a new set of employees or added employees to that same group, and they'll probably be asking the same questions.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's funny because along the journey, what we often hear about those more tenured people is saying how they wish they started saving 10 years ago. And when we had that question posed to us 10 years ago and we told them how important it was to start saving, it didn't land. Right? And they didn't start saving. And then they fast forward and it's like, all right, well, how can I put a whole bunch of money in here because I'm behind? And unfortunately, the power of tax deferred growth, if we were to know about that or learn about that earlier on, I think you'd see more and more people saving a lot more money earlier on in their working years versus what we typically see is our 40, 50, and 60-year-olds trying to push as much money in there as they can versus starting when in their 20s when they first start working.
And you think it's probably that it doesn't resonate with them sooner? It's not resonating with them that 10 years sooner. And so 10 years later, they're starting to say, oh, I wish I was doing this before. So what clicked for them 10 years later?
Yeah, I think they get worried. I think they look at their balance and they're a little bit worried that they're not saving and that, maybe a peer or a family member or somebody like that, it comes up at the picnic and they say, oh yeah, I've already saved, $150,000 for my retirement. And meanwhile, that 30 or 40-year-old is like, I haven't saved anything yet. I'm way behind, right? And we all know the limits don't allow you just to put $150,000 in there. So, you're behind. And I think when they feel that, they at least start saving, which is a good thing. But I think if we can teach them how to save sooner, it would be a lot better.
Oh, yeah. I mean, then they get the benefit of it sitting in that savings vehicle or that investment vehicle for that much longer. So there's a lot of benefits to that for sure. You played sports growing up, right?
Sure. Yep.
I, I think a lot of times there's an interesting concept of finances where it's when we get to those milestones that we start addressing the finance issue. But if we were playing in a sport, we wouldn't just start training the day that we have a game. We would be training much sooner. So just even from an athlete's perspective, do you see any correlations? Are there any other stories that you might use when talking to individuals about finances?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, right? You can't just go out and throw a no-hitter. And you can't just go out and hit 500 home runs and that's it, right? There's a certain amount of practice and repetition and routine that goes into becoming an athlete. And I think about all the money today that all the parents out there are spending on sports, right? Whether it's for travel this or travel that or a tournament here or a tournament there or how much a baseball bat for a 10-year-old costs now, right? You can use all that information to, maybe not go on that tournament and maybe spend a little bit of that money and time teaching your kids a little bit more about, financial literacy. Like you can't just one day decide, okay, I'm going to be a millionaire and the next day you are, right? It takes a lot of work and a lot of practice. And I think that if we're able to kind of insert that in a little bit earlier in our development as a person, that it can yield some really significant results in the future. So I do think sports has a very, very close correlation with finance, and that if you don't learn it, you're not going to go out there and do it. You gotta practice and you gotta learn it.
Point. But you're not saying that we need to frugal ourselves into wealth. That's not what I'm hearing, right?
No, not at all. I just think it's a little bit of time, right? Here and there. These kids are practicing soccer 3 days a week and playing 2 games every weekend. How often are you talking about the benefits of life insurance to them? Probably never. Right?
Yes. Well,
talk about it once a year, twice a year, right?
I mean, good luck with that one. And I would like to hear, because you are a father of how many? 3?
I have 3, yep.
And tell me their ages.
I have 13, 10, and 7.
I want to know if you talk about life insurance at the dinner table.
You don't talk about life insurance as life insurance, right? You talk about it when something happens, right? So there's a death in the family, or there's a good friend that dies. And, we talk about it, right? Everybody kind of shares what they feel about it and all that. And then we think about, well, how is that surviving spouse going to live? How are they going to pay? Because right now they don't have a job. Okay, well, there's this thing called life insurance that you can buy and you pay for it over time. And when you pass away, who's ever surviving gets the money you paid. It's as simple as that.
Well, so that's still a pretty big concept to be able to relay to even a child at age 13. I mean, I think that when it can't be, yes, when it's relatable, it's digestible, but those are kind of big concepts. So I like it, going back to your sports analogies. What stood out to me in the way that you talked about it was this idea of it kind of infiltrating in smaller ways and a consistency, but it's almost like you're getting kind of trickle feeding information about the sport, about you as an athlete, what needs to be changed. I think that could be really interesting when we're talking about bringing money conversations in at home. Did you have money conversations at home growing up?
Yeah, we did. We not like we were sitting around the dinner table talking about it all the time, but situations came up where, you're 14 years old and have a paper route. Well, why do you have a paper route? What are you going to do with that money, right? one of the things that we've introduced to our children as they've, had their first communions or have, after Christmas or a birthday and they have a bunch of money, it's kind of like, well, the bank will pay you to hold your money for you, right? And that's how we introduce the idea of interest, right? We don't talk about interest. We just tell them they'll pay you to hold your money. Oh, well, I want that because I want more money, right? So there's, like you said, there's these teachable moments, which are some of the things that I learned growing up is, you should save a certain amount of your money. Yes, you should spend some of your hard-earned money as well, but here's the benefits of saving it. Somebody else will hold it and give you money for it.
And what have you found has resonated with your own kids and money conversations at home? I know that you are a very entrepreneurial type mindset, and you've worked for major investment corporations, and now you're in the tech space of the 401k world. So I know that with all of that, you have an interesting perspective about the finance world and about how we relate to finances. How does that affect the way that you talk to your kids about finances?
Yeah, I know it's hard to say what I do for a living, right? So when my kids ask me, it's kind of like, well, you know how your grandfather retired? I help people do that, right? But I think to your question, when it comes down to it, and teaching some very complicated things to young kids, even a 13-year-old, it's hard, right? It's hard to teach them that stuff. So I think we look for those examples, and I think the one thing that we try to impart on our children is you save some, you spend some, and you donate some. And we try to make sure that when they're accumulating their money, they're thinking about that. It's really funny because on the donation side, one of the things that we started doing several years ago is we allow our children to be a part of our charitable donations every year. So we will ask them who they want to donate to. And we don't necessarily make them take their own money and donate it. We use our own, but we let them choose where that money is going to go. So it's like, who do you want to help this year? And if you've never done it with your family before, it's amazing some of the people they want to donate money to. A couple years ago, when my oldest was 11, his charitable donation went to children of domestic abuse. Now, finance is a pretty complicated concept to handle, but like something like that, it's crazy. Yeah. So we've donated to the SPCA, the library, the YMCA, and the kids get a kick out of, you give some money to the SPCA and they send you like a calendar, right? And you get all like the cute pictures of puppies and everything for the year. But, it's just part of it, right? So now the kids, as they're getting older and they think about donating and they're doing some more service-oriented projects, they know that these service projects help people. And it's not just money that can help people, it's other things. So I think that, that's a way to teach kids about money. We talked about the saving spot, and then the spending side of it, it's, I want to save up to buy this new pair of sneakers, right? And we'll say, okay, well, we'll give you the $30 or $40 to get you started, but if you want a $120 pair of sneakers that you're going to grow out of in 6 months, then you got to fund the rest of it. Right. And sometimes they want it bad enough that they'll do it. And other times they're like, well, maybe I'll spend my money in a little bit of a different way because I know they won't fit me in 6 months. So it's kind of posing some of those types of decisions towards them to help them learn, right? Again, it's all practice. And they'll spend the money on those Air Jordans one time and they'll regret it in 6 months when they're still in the box and they can't wear them. But that becomes an opportunity for donation, right? Giving it to the local clothing stores that can use donations like that as well.
Well, I like the way that you're basically creating an environment for your kids to have an acute sensitivity to how money can be used, how money can be earned, and just a perspective on money in general. And just knowing that you have an interesting form of profession in the finance space probably gives them a little bit of sensitivity as well. But I do like your approach, and I really appreciate your insight and perspective today. So thank you so much for your time, Drew.
Oh, you're so welcome, Faith. Thanks for having me, and look forward to talking again soon.
Sounds good. The four sibling monsters are each so different, but they share the same dream: to get a family puppy. When the kids concoct a plan to show mom they can handle a puppy, they learn they don't always feel the same excitement about work. With the help of a few guiding moments and creativity, the siblings discover clever strategies to help them get what they truly want. Head over to themonsterjob.com to get your copy today.